Hi, beautiful people. I am back from the depths of hell, literally speaking. But we're not going to talk about that today. I have a special guest today that I will be chatting with. Her name is Jennifer Perlmutter. She is an artist based in Carmel by the Sea, California. Gorgeous place, gorgeous gallery. And I met her while I was there, of course, and I will be waiting for her to join us. So I will pause this recording and we'll get back once she's ready to join. And we'll start the conversation. So stay tuned. Okay, here's Jennifer. I see her. Finally. Did it. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Can you see me? I can see
Yes, yes, yes.
and I can hear you.
Hi.
So good to see you, Jennifer.
It's so good to see you too. So tell me where you are again.
I am in Michigan.
Michigan. Okay. Is there
Yeah.
snow on the ground?
Not currently, but it was snowing a few days ago. It rained a lot and now the snow has melted, but it's been pretty gloomy.
It has, yeah.
How's it
Yeah.
in Carmel?
Well, it's got blue skies right now, but it's probably like 50, you know, or just under. So just in the last couple days, it's gotten chilly where you step outside and it's a little bracing.
Yeah.
But, ordinarily during the day, I'm only talking about after the sun goes down. I've still been able to get in the ocean. And
Nice.
yeah, it's not that awful. It's kind of what's expected. We had our first, I'm sure you recall, the storms that would take out the electricity
Yeah,
and
I
the
heard there was
Wi-Fi.
another one. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one a few days back, and like so many people lost power. I only lost Wi-Fi, and it came back on yesterday. So, but that's just typical. So here we are. We're in the middle of what will be the norm for a few months.
Yeah, that's too bad. But
Yeah.
I mean, I am so missing the whole area and I wish I could dip in the ocean right now.
Oh man. It's really phenomenal. We can talk a little bit about what makes it so, but
Maybe later.
yeah.
Let's get into why we're here. So I'd love to talk
Yeah.
to you about your process, mostly your creative process. But first, I would love for you to share a little bit of like a little bio of your background and how you came to this work, how you became an artist, basically, if you would like to share with people.
Sure.
And I've already introduced you, so this is Jennifer, everyone.
Okay, okay.
Whatever you'd like to share about your background and what brought you to making your artwork.
We never know what's unique about our story until we tell it and people reflect back to us how unique that is. And you're like, it's just what I did. So I will tell you kind of like, so I am 58 years old and I have been in my art career for 25 years or so. And when I look back, like when was the pivotal moment that I said, I got to work with my hands? This is so satisfying. And I think I have something here because in the process of doing this, there was this great opening, right? And I hadn't really experienced that before, maybe in, high school theater productions where I really dug the collaborative community aspect of theater. And so that led to me right after high school when I was at junior college in Napa. I volunteered to work on the production of Hamlet. And so I went to the backstage. I was in tech and worked in the props room, very small, like sewing and props room. And I helped to create, I did whatever they told me to. I had no experience. And I was helping to create the skull and the scepters and the jeweled things that were part of the set and the costumes. And I loved it. And from there, I went to Emerson College in Boston and was surrounded by incredible friends and roommates and community that were doing things either in theater or television production. And so I was always really close to it, although I didn't know, I thought I was going to go into broadcast journalism, but I dumped that really fast and just finished my degree and started working after a while, moved to New York and started working as a production assistant. Back in the day, just it's a PA, it's gig work. You know, you work on set, and again, it was the all the moving parts that really intrigued me, and this like we're all going to make this thing, and it's going to come together as a final unit, and then you move on to the next project. It's exhilarating and just very high learning curve and a lot of fun. So I did that for a while, eventually moved to Los Angeles, continued that in a larger scale. In LA, there's so much production. So I was working in film and TV, either assisting. So when you assist producers and directors, you learn the business end of things, how to get something from an idea to a finished script, to casting, from casting to all the pre-production that it takes with the business end of things. And then that produces and comes to an end, goes to post-production, and you have this thing that's offered. And, you know, I worked on The Usual Suspects, and so it actually made it to the Academy Awards. And
Oh,
so it was a great moment of collaborative creativity.
mhm.
And then from there, I decided, you know, this is great, but these are gigs. I want some sustaining thing that is continuing. And so the below the line talent was always out of work. Above the line in the producer realms and casting realms, you know, they're usually paid really well and they can sustain a little off time, whatever. So I switched and started working after a stint in Universal Pictures legal department, which again is used in my business because I was the only artist among many of my artist friends that had worked in legal and licensing and what's called rights and clearances. So when our work goes on set or when it's used in a film or anything and without our permission, that's not really something to celebrate. That's something to track down and get what's due you.
Yeah.
So being in the legal department at Universal Pictures got me to see that there's a whole system set up to pay the creative. The creative just thinks it's neat that their painting was in the background, they're going to miss out. So this happened to me one time, and I went to the legal department of a particular network, and I was paid far more than I had ever been paid for a painting in remuneration for a painting that was used on set without my permission. So there was all this background kind of like aha moments in my creative collaboration that I don't think is taught in art school, that is not really taught unless you're you bump into all these strange occupations. So I go and I pursue what's fascinating to me about the props and the sets were this building. So I worked in carpentry shops with builders on furniture. I thought I'd make something tangible that sustained, that had legacy, that could, you know, be worth something and then be passed down. I thought that was far more, felt good to me with integrity, as opposed to a set that gets torn down or stored, right, and reused. So I opened a furniture studio after apprenticing with a furniture painter. This is Jacqueline Moore Designs, who's incredible. She's still out there producing incredible work. Her studio's in Ojai. But so we opened a studio. My husband, I pulled him from what he was doing, and he was working the office. Anyway, this went on for a couple years, and then while I was doing these great big furniture pieces and armoires and chinoiserie and antique reproduction work, I was also using the same supplies when I had time to create artwork and put it up on the walls of this big studio where the designers would come in and pick up their work. So eventually I got, there was a gallery in Larchmont Village, Mardine Davis, and she and I would speak. I'd go in there and look around, and she was like, bring your work, let me see it. So she started selling and also renting my work to the local production companies for sets. And that's, again, very fortunate that I had had the experience in the legal department to understand that whole process and what I was due. And so the designers that we serviced through furniture eventually started purchasing my works that were on the wall, these experimental works in shellac and lacquer and oil and plaster on wood, found wood, or wood from the lumber store that I had cut up and sanded and constructed. So I only worked on using non-traditional material from hardwares and industrial supply stores and lumber yards for a few years, because that's the material I was familiar with.
Yeah.
And then I got gallery representation in Beverly Hills. I dropped the furniture and did very well with them for a few years, and then eventually moved up the coast, and I've been up in Northern California since 2009, and had a gallery in Lafayette, opened a gallery there. I didn't see anything that really represented my work in that area. And I am a very much like, well, let's see if I can do it. I'm a DIYer, always have been. And so, and also my son was young, and I didn't want to be always gone. That happened anyway, by the way. But yeah, I was in Lafayette, and that's where he was going to school, and so I opened a little gallery, and my dear friend Laura Dudo said, you know, make this the place where that you want to show your work, the ideal place. So the concept was a New York gallery, and the floors were painted and lacquered, and the walls were simple, and the lighting system was top notch. And I held shows for me and so many Bay Area artists. And then eventually I worked my way into a much larger space downtown Lafayette. And then COVID hit, and then dropped the one, came to Carmel, moved to Monterey, and here we are.
Yeah. Wow, what a journey. So many things I didn't even know about you for 3 years. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. How interesting that we never spoke about this.
I know.
But
It's
then
a
it was
long
always
story.
it was always how I'm like struggling.
Yep.
um, it's kind of interesting. You went from like building sets to like Universal Pictures, and then the furniture studio, and then you went to
Right.
Beverly Hills, and like what a journey. But then you found your calling in the end, which is
Yeah.
a gallery owner in Carmel. And I love it.
Yeah.
That's how I met
Me-
you.
That is how we met. And I think about the moniker of gallery owner in Carmel a lot, and that's fine. And again, I can't tell everybody my whole story and what's important to me, but what's truly important to me is being a painter and improving my artistry, and constantly being curious about where it's going to take me and what can I do better. That's just how I am driven. And it's frustrating sometimes, but it's also gotten me here, which I can make a living as long as I'm making a living. I say that all the time because very common that people come in and they're like, so how you doing, how's it going? And I think what that means is, are you selling paintings, are you actually doing this?
Yeah.
Yes. And when you don't see me here, no.
As long as I'm selling, I'm here.
Exactly.
Love
And there might even be, I've been here for 4 years. This is not for pansies
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all.
No, I
And
know because I tried to do something similar in Monterey, and that didn't go so well.
it's
But I
hard.
think it's also, it boils down to building community, which you've been able to do. For me, it was like I was just brand new in town, like who's gonna trust what I'm doing, that kind of thing. I didn't have many connections, and I was just scared out of my mind about like paying rent and not being able to make rent every month. And having
Yeah,
paid that on top of the rent where I was living, like that's crazy. So I dropped it
totally.
all. But I feel like you were courageous in staying the path, like you didn't drop the ball. But I want to know exactly what made you stick with it. Like, was it because you had already developed a community, or was it because you just trusted that it was going to happen? What were the factors that played into you um, proceeding with the project and not giving up on it like I did?
Okay, fair question. And there's a tense to your question that I'd like to change, which is past. You say, what made you stick with it? What are the factors that played into it? And I'd like to say, what makes me stick to it? What are the factors that play into it? Because it's a present day project.
Mhm.
And every week, Susie, I give myself permission to change my mind every freaking day.
You have to.
You have to. And is there courage? Absolutely. But because I would say like a lot of times I do stuff and I mean, almost all the time I do things, I'm very uncertain how they're going to go. But the thing that I have that is consistent, and I don't have a lot of consistency, it's a thing I need to work on, um, is, is my faith that if it doesn't work out the way I wanted it to. I mean, look at even your situation too, Susie. And if I may, I looked at you online and I looked up to you. I think you're courageous. I watch your videos of inspiration and how you're open and vulnerable and you say, this is how I'm feeling today. It's either great or it sucks. And like I love that. I would always stop when I saw you in the feed. So right back at you. I am inspired by your courage. And you know what? There is a higher plan. And if I don't believe in that, if my belief is that I know what's the best thing for me, I'm kind of screwed. I can know what the best thing for me is in this moment and on this day, and where am I going to get lunch? And I'm going to make a painting because I'm inspired over the last sunset I saw or something like that. I can know these things, but I can't know the best and highest thing for myself.
Yeah.
So I have to trust that I will be okay. And that's a constant practice of surrender. So your question of like how do I stay with it? It's staying with it one day at a time, staying with it in each moment. And when I start to freak out about something or feel the edge, like sometimes I'll run really close to the bone. I'll be super honest here, like it's a load to stay here. It's a lot. And in retail of any kind, if someone tells you differently, they're lying. In retail of any kind, you have ups and downs. You have seasons and cycles. It's the way business works. So you can project, but you can also know that no matter how much I project, anything can happen. So you try to hedge your bets and have something else going. And what if this happens? I can downsize here. I can cut this expense. You're always kind of like going like this because I feel like that's universal flow. It's a wave. It's so get on your surfboard, feel it and work it and know that, it doesn't mean you're going under. It just means there's change. There's a comfort level with change that is so key to being successful.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm also thinking it's probably because you also have an insight into the business end of things, which is a quality that I completely lack. Like maybe I've learned a few things along the years, but it's not enough to keep me sustained and thinking, oh, like I can do this on my own kind of thing. Where
Yeah.
it feels like you have that background, so you um, kind of tune into it when you need to, and do the resourcing that way. Like, yeah, you know, like you said, I can cut ends here, I could do this, I could do that, like, which I think honestly every artist needs that skill set, and I wish that they would have provided it as part of the curriculum when I was doing my art degree. Or, you know, highly recommended every artist out there go get some business classes basically, because if you can't sell your stuff, you're stuck.
You're right. There's a lot to what you said. And I'll share also that my upbringing, I have two older brothers, we're super close in age, and a mother and father that owned a business my entire life. They were entrepreneurs. They went from owning, when I was super little, it was a liquor store. And then when we were in middle and high, my parents ran a restaurant. And if you don't learn by the seat of your pants how to survive by running a restaurant, you haven't been awake. And everything that comes with that, again, the season of that, there's ups and downs, there were losses and gains. There was 1 minute we're members of the country club, and the next minute we're bankrupt. I mean, it was riding a wave. At the end of the day, we all had each other, and that did get me through. But I didn't go to art school. And I would always, I tell you, get your master's later in life if you want to have that degree on historical art, but do what you love as an artist in your form until you have iterated every possible thing until you die. So it would be, because you're never done as an artist. You do that alongside all these other things. You go to college for something else, but you're doing your art. You know, you want to be a filmmaker. Okay, you need to learn certain things, get some classes under your belt at NYU, whatever, do that. But also you got to learn how to play the game and, sit in a pitch meeting and know about distribution and acquisition of that property. And you have to know how. This is the other key component early on, was this notion of distribution. Because what you're talking about with your art form, if you write a book, if you make a song, I don't care, if you paint a picture, it stays in your bedroom or it is distributed. And now with the great interwebs, we can do just about anything we want to. And it's not to say that you'll be a millionaire doing it, but you've got to have some of that business acumen. And I was lucky to grow up in an entrepreneurial, seat of your pants family. I mean, and they're all successful. My brothers became very successful. My mom ended up becoming the matriarch that was so successful. She hired my brothers, and then their company split and they went off and did great things. I didn't do that because by the time those things were going, I was already an artist selling. But I had learned from, the way they operated in the business world. And so it's natural for me to be able to be here with my work.
So
Mm.
let's get into your process. I see the pieces behind you. Those are yours, right? They're
Yeah.
very different than the ones I'd seen when I was in Carmel. The ones I'd seen were like more like collages,
Oh
right?
yeah, I have those too.
Collages as well.
I've
Yes,
got
very
lots.
very
Yeah.
multifaceted. Those are very cool. Are they oils? They look like they might.
No, these are all mixed media. I call them my portals, one to the forest, one to the ocean, and one to the garden. And those are what's called a tondo canvas when they're constructed in the round like that. They're mahogany panels with layers of paper that's then peeled off, and then layers of plaster. And that combination I really love to paint on top of. So it's a deconstructed surface that has this really thirsty paper, but also a skim of a vinyl plaster that I apply, which is nice and resistive, but also provides a lot of texture. So they're really textured. These
Yes.
are kind of flat on the screen, but they have lots of bumps and different pockets of color and stuff. And yes, I do have a tremendous variety of work, although I'm not showing any like realistic paintings. These are impressionistic abstracts or purely non-objective abstract paintings. And they all have several layers of collage underneath that's either showing or more evidently or is, oh, I think I see something, and then you get closer and you discover something. But all of these paintings, I probably have 18 on display or so, have a very forward collage component
Yeah.
that is near and dear to my process. And I think that came from, I mean, it had to come from this notion of building. I thought I was going to be constructing. I had my first show in the Bay Area was called Build, and it was in a little cafe. He said, "Yeah, come. You're invited to show in the cafe." And so the title of it and the running of it and all was up to me. So I called it Build, and I made it out of scraps of wood and wire. And so that's a part of my process is to not leave anything out that just because it's not paint. I'm constantly curious, how can I make my work even more unique to what I'm going through at the time?
So what inspires you? How does the vision come to you, like from start to finish when you start a painting? Like how do you get inspired to like work on it? Do you like force yourself? Do you wait for the moment of like, you know, the muse or
Yeah,
like just describe some sort of a process? And I know from researching creative process myself, I know that it's never the same, like ever.
right,
There's like
right.
infinite ways of making things. But
Totally.
in general, like what's the calling and how do you know like it's time for a painting now? And like how do you know which direction to go?
That's
What
that's a good question because
taking it?
there are so many directions. But I'll get like to answer your question regarding beginning and this idea of a muse. The muse, let's call it in my mind, the muse is spirit. It's an energy. It's a that works with me, a collaborator. And I'll say she because I feel it is very feminine, although it's also very non-gender, because there's other moments where I'll call upon, like, if I have favorite artists in history, I'll think of them.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
But this idea of the muse, they're sitting up there waiting. They're like, oh, she's gonna be here pretty soon. I'm sure it's been 3 days now. How long could this go on, right? So they're always there, but they can't make a parked car move.
Yeah.
You got to get in and turn the ignition and press the accelerator and pretend you know where you're going. Pretend. Like, have you ever gone on a drive because you just need to like go on a drive, right? It's the same in the studio. Like I actually was journaling this morning, and I get really antsy and itchy and kind of like not pleasant to be around when I haven't been expressing in the studio. And so it's been a minute. I mean, it's probably been, I finished this anyway, it's been too long, like a week. And that's because it's a very busy holiday season, and I have a big end of the year sale going. And so if I'm not shipping stuff, then I'm cleaning up and setting up something else. We had art walk. I still haven't cleaned up from that. So there's a lot of things that will keep me out of the studio, way too many. But to get in there, it's courage, it's willingness to be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's like, yes, I'm in there, but there's always a sacrifice. I feel like that's fair. I feel it's fair to sacrifice for what is given to me when I'm in the studio. And what I mean by that is you got to shut your door, Jen. You got to put a sign up that says closed. I might sacrifice seeing, that collector who's been waiting for me to be, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
it's a sacrifice. Or maybe you don't go to the thing that all your friends are going to. That's a sacrifice. And I think that the greater consciousness and flow deserves that, you know, deserves that. So um it's different every time, Susie,
Yeah.
like the process. but your question of like, what do you I work in a lot of different categories and buckets.
Mhm.
So sometimes I'll get real like painterly and I'll start things with a big brush and a lot of color. And then eventually, in the last 3 years, collage is never not a part of something,
Yeah.
and so it's a building for me. And it's also like people who make mandalas, I kind of think of it's the same thing. It's like, this is helping me, process that conversation I had this morning. And then what about that? And then I'd like to do that. And do you think that's possible? I don't know if other artists are like that, but it's a big journal dump.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter what's happening at the beginning. And I've no real place to say that it's even not the middle, if you know what I mean. It's like I'm in the car driving. Somebody else is taking the wheel and guiding me to my highest good. And that again is a lot of surrender. And sometimes it feels like that isn't around and that I'm all alone. And that's when I need to go in the ocean and remember that there are so many things bigger than me.
From what you're saying, I'm kind of feeling like you are the true intuitively guided artist. Like you don't go into your head, you just follow your intuition about what's going to happen next. And that's a great thing because not a lot of artists are like that. You ask the question, like, if everybody's like that, there are some artists that calculate and measure and like they're very precise of what it is that they're trying to depict. There's like a vision there that they want on there, and it's not to say that this is bad or wrong, but it's just a whole entirely different process. uh,
Yeah.
the intuitive one is the more cathartic, it's the more healing. Like you said, it's just your journal, you're just dumping.
Right. Then so after you do that for so many years, and you also have your eye on what historical artists you love, and you go to museums and stuff, and you sort of self-teach, oh, why is that good? Ooh, why do I like him? Oh, he does that thing. I totally know what I do that too, and so after 25 years, you're right, of doing this intuitive stuff, you start to inherently, or maybe without even thinking about it, your compositions become more informed
Mhm.
towards, I don't know, classical, or just because there is an element of beauty and that is attractive to the eye, that brings people closer to get curious about what's underneath.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's this notion of kind of shallow beauty, where it's very much on the surface, and then there's this beauty that is truth. I want to know what that is. I want to feel it, live in it, and swim in it every day of my life, and I'll never uncover it.
Yeah,
So what an incredible journey to just continue digging.
yeah.
But Susie, I wonder, I don't know if you have any more questions, but just
I
having
do, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay,
We
so another thing I admire and appreciate and respect about you is all the work you've done in shadow and trauma, all your healing work. And I have to bring something up, and I wonder if just by saying it, I can dispel it, because I'm really tired of it.
go for it.
And let me tell you a little story. So recently, this happens all the time. So any friend who thinks it's them, there's don't worry about it, because it's happened in so many conversations. And so I'm going to generalize, but I'll be having dinner with, or in a group setting of, let's say I'm the only artist in that gathering, because I have circles in the sciences and business, and I have lots of different groups that I hang out with. And then just people, good old friends and collectors who will have me over for dinner and stuff. And they know what I do. They've appreciated what I do by actually bringing my work into their home. And they're fascinated by the fact that I also run the business.
Mm.
And it brings up this thing in me that is kind of, well, okay, so what it brings up in me when it comes from them, not when it comes from, usually not when it comes from an artist, like it didn't happen when you were asking me about business. But I get defensive because through their questioning, I feel as though they don't value me as much as they do the struggling artist that is, struggling to find, their market or their way in the world, because their questioning is always about, how do you do it? Well, that isn't normal. And I just don't know. How do you, because most artists, which is so interesting because they're not artists, yet they make statements like, most artists won't do that. And most artists have, and I don't know how to respond in a room where I feel like I'm on the hot seat, like I have to somehow defend the fact that.
Yeah, interesting. Wow, I think there's like a couple of things playing into this, like one on their end, but then also you're wanting to like feeling like you need to react to it in some way or like respond to it. But there's perhaps like you're feeling like an imposter when you feel like that. And I would just do some self-reflection about that. Like, why is that bringing it up? You're not an imposter. You just happen to know a lot about business. And it's a quality that so many artists would die to have. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not something that's impossible. It's not something that produces an imposter. It's just the ability to sell what you're making.
Right.
And if you didn't sell what you're making, how are you going to survive?
Right. And
It's
why,
legitimate stuff that you're doing. And you should run classes to teach artists how to do it because you obviously know what it is that needs to be done.
yeah. I mean, there's a, well, thank you.
Them questioning it is on them because they have this preconditioned idea that an artist can't be a salesperson, which is such an outdated idea because it's so wrong. You don't have to hire a team of people to sell your art. You can do that yourself if you know.
Right. Right.
You only
Yeah.
hire them, you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. It's more on them, but it brings this little ire up in me. And and when it does, I think, each time it happens a lot. I will then afterwards, what is it? Why does that make me so mad? And I think it's just because, what I do, I feel is legit. And when someone says it must not be because you're selling it yourself, don't you want someone else to sell it for you? I've had other people sell my work. I sell a lot more of it than they ever did.
Exactly. And you have to give them 20%, 30%, sometimes 50% if they sell it for you. So why? They
I
didn't,
know.
they
Yeah,
didn't
that's
take
true.
it.
Yeah.
They didn't have to shut the door and sacrifice things so that they can produce it.
Right. 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 Thank you, Susie. I just wanted to talk to you about that because
Oh no, I totally get it. Oh my God.
yeah, but and then also the other thing about you moving, because when you did, and I watched watched you try to set something up, and then it, just hitting whether it was timing or whatever. Also, Monterey's weird. I'm sorry, but like it's this peninsula, if and to your point about community too, I'm on Dolores Street in Carmel. All I gotta do is show up, be friendly, be supportive, and my community is right here. It's so beautiful. So in many different neighborhoods and districts, it's difficult to have that. And in I've popped up before, I've had retail before, I've been in Los Angeles, and I have never seen anything like this. So, and I also knew that when you moved, it was the highest and best thing for you. Look at your background. Do you live there?
Yeah, this is my home. It's like a little artist.
I love it.
Thank you. But going back to the whole like trying to make it in that area, I think had I decided to persevere, like if I didn't freak out the first 3 months of renting that space and trying to build community, I think I would have made it happen. I think I panicked because I didn't have community. And I'm like, now what? So I dropped the ball. I feel like eventually we could have collaborated. I could have collaborated with any other artist in the area, but I think there was like this fear in me. And I, like, after doing so much work on it, I understand that it comes from childhood programming of lack, it's like the whole lack idea. And I'm hoping that it's gone now because I've been working on it for a while. But
Yep. But then just also fiscally speaking, without any psychoanalyzing the reasons why, you know, I had the good fortune of COVID. I had the PPL or whatever it was called. Without capital to cover your ass for a few months, Susie, any business. So don't beat
yeah,
yourself
I,
up
I had
because
zero capital and I
yeah,
was literally pulling from my IRA, which is
oh,
now completely depleted. And as a consequence of living in California, I've accumulated a huge debt that I have to now pay off because
I,
I had an accident there, if you remember. My car was totaled. I had to buy
that's
a new
right.
car and I was paying rent being unemployed. So there's that.
Yeah, all of those things were guiding you to a much better place.
Yeah. I mean, it's all been a journey in learning. Like I've learned so much from being there, but also I proved to myself that I could go wherever I want to and come back alive. Here I am.
I love that. I love that. And there's my grace as well. Like, this is really great. Let's see how long it lasts. And when it's not lasting, we pivot, we change.
And my easel's waiting for me. I still have not touched it since I came here. I just painted
Oh,
that one mural and the painting that I did at the art fair, and that's it. I'm wanting to get to it. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, maybe by the new year, I'll be on there.
good.
Still trying to get set up and organized, taking care of all this stuff. I wanted to ask, actually, this has been on my mind since we started the conversation, is how do you build community? Because it's something I struggle with. Timing
So,
and
yep.
schedules and people having different ideas of what things should be. And like, how do you get people together to do the one thing that needs to be done? Like I've
Well,
struggled with this a lot in the past few years. And
so I remember when I was in Lafayette and I had my son and he was in elementary school, and I had a studio in Berkeley. This is before I opened the gallery. And I really like, that's fine. I went there every day and worked and came back. And when you have a kid in school, Susie, I don't know if you remember, but you all of a sudden like run into people, maybe they're walking their dogs or whatever, and you start to see them the same time every day. And that's the first glimmer of community that I had when we moved from LA, because before that, I didn't have any. I mean, we had some in LA, we moved to Lafayette, and I was like, okay, I'm an artist. And everyone's like, yeah, whatever, you probably do it as a hobby. Nobody took me seriously. And my studio being in Berkeley, maybe like once a year, a few people would come out to open studios, but I didn't really have the community. And it wasn't until I opened the gallery where I realized I really need it. I mean, having a son and a full-time painting practice, that's a lot already. But when you open a gallery, then you not only want to build community, you need to build sales. So the first part of that is community. So there's the saying, which I love and started me off, launched me, and I don't think I've really had to think about it ever since, which was, whatever it is you're wanting, do for others.
Mhm.
So if you want some visibility, then look around. For me, it was, ooh, gosh, there's so many talented interior designers and architects and artists in my area, but it doesn't seem like anyone's writing about them or showing their work, or everyone seems to be grousing about, this or that. So what can I do for them? Because I'm looking for the same things ultimately. And then I started to build shows to promote them and feature them. I don't know anyone who was giving and, letting, the first thing I created was called Design and Build or something like that. And I invited interior designers and framers, quilter, to my space on a ticketed event over a period of like 3 days, where they gave a talk and a demonstration. I just brought people in and gave them this, like, and people sat in chairs. They came on their lunch breaks after they dropped their kid off, and they watched these other people talk about their trade. And I continued that in the Lafayette galleries, always interviewing artists and bringing them in, set a table up, give a demo. And it was, I was building community.
Yeah.
The artists loved it, I loved it, I learned so much. And then they would also, people would come back, oh, I was at that talk with Bill Rushton, wow, it was amazing, and people relied on that as an extension of community for them. So I wanted community, but I ended up giving it to them, and it came back year after year. And the stories that you hear about the impact of that night, or how we really really missed you in town, can you do that again? And, you know, that is the thing, is like, what is it that you're struggling with or that you really need the most? It could be visibility, followers. It could be, an audience, a newsletter list. Help other people get it, and you will find that you get it too. And
Yeah.
it's a win-win. And that's how you build community, because it's not just for you, right? It's for the person who was looking for some connection.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that, because this is why I started this YouTube channel and I started interviewing artists many years ago. It's been like 8 years now. However, when
Wow.
I got to Monterey, I interviewed 3 or 4 artists and then I dropped the ball because I got so into the hustle. Like
Mm.
I was like panicking. I need to work to like make ends meet and pay my rent. That was the focus. I couldn't focus on anything else. Plus, I was like, at the end of it, I was like in a 300 square foot studio
Yeah.
that didn't really permit me to record anything.
Yeah.
Like one side would be facing the kitchen, the other side would be facing the bathroom or my closet. Like,
I know. When I look back, just in the little bit I knew you when you were here, despite all those things, you kept turning the camera on and bringing value to us.
yes.
So, but I still feel like that is very interesting, that with all your generosity, it didn't work financially. But again, Susie, that's not your fault. Like, there were so many circumstances,
So
you
yeah,
know.
like this is like a circumstance beyond my uh, power. Basically, I had to come back because of certain things that I need to be here for, and that's the realization I came to, and that's why I dropped everything and came back. I'm sure it would have worked out over there, but then before I decided to relocate, I was investigating like what's going to be different if I return? The only thing that's going to be different is I won't have the ocean next door.
Right.
Everything else is going to be exactly the same, but and I'll be close to my kids.
I mean, that's the gold.
Exactly. And I'm like, if they're not going to come there, I'm just going back because
Yep.
life is short and I'm not going to live whatever's left of my life without them being around.
Amen.
Up,
That's
and
it.
that was it. I up and
That's
left.
it. That's it. That's beautiful realization. You gave it your all. And then you come to this also this kind of notion of, life is short.
Yeah.
And if one of the top three things in your journal of what's important to you is your kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was hoping they would come over there, right? But when I saw that there's no chance for that happening,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm on my
Yeah.
way back.
Yep. Are you close to Lake Michigan at all?
I'm about 4 hours away.
Oh, that's not too
Not too
close.
bad. Yeah, in the summer it's really nice. Like I'll definitely make some trips there. But hey, you're welcome over if you ever feel like it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. I would love that.
Wow, this was a great conversation. I'm so glad we finally connected. We've been trying to schedule this for like 3 months now, but
I
then
know.
the nomadic lifestyle that I've been living has been quite interesting, like from one place to the next, and I'm finally settled.
Oh, that's
Hopefully, I'm
fabulous.
not going anywhere for a while.
No, I love the color of that wall behind you. That's so
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, it's
Good. Yeah,
cool.
that's really pretty.
When I saw this, I was like, oh, this is perfect for me. So I'm glad. And oh my gosh, like, let's not even go about like the rents over here. They're like so much more affordable than in California and
Oh my God.
seaside, so to speak. That's a whole nother video on it.
Oh, it's crazy. I know. I know. It's crazy.
So I wanted to ask you if people were interested in looking at some of what is available from your artwork. Do you have them online, or do they have to visit the gallery in person?
No,
Or
they can see it online. My website is regularly updated. So all my collection is on there. Of course, there are pieces that are in the studio that haven't been photographed yet, but only a couple. And then there's also an end of year sale up there and a Shopify for smaller works. So everything is dialed in.
wonderful. I love.
Yeah.
Do you have any events coming up? Anything in the works? Anything you're planning? A series?
Yes, there's a project for 25 that I'm going to be working on, and also I want to say, like, I don't do this all alone. I have another person that I work with that has a small agency for artist support, and she helps me update my website, does social media with me, and she works through in sort of a coaching manner these projects that I come up with. So I don't want anyone to think that I do it all on my own. That would be boring too.
Yeah.
So anyway, I do have a project, and you know what? When it's like a little fuller fleshed, I would love to come back and talk about it. But
Sure.
it has to do with process and this idea of creativity and not so much intuition, but now that you mention it, I mean that's really where it's coming from. It's intuition is slowing down and sensing the moment, really listening and seeing. And so is an art making process, and so is cooking. And so in domestic life and in life in general, there are these parallels. And I'm going to be doing a project around that involves some writing and a body of work, and I guess speaking about it. So I'm
Nice.
looking forward to that. There's no timeline on it. I'm just gonna one step at a time and see what happens, but that's
And
exciting to
I'd
me.
love to talk to you about it whenever you're ready to talk about it. Just shoot me a message and we can schedule something.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much,
Of
Susie.
course. And you never know, maybe I'll come and visit sometime soon.
Oh, that would be great. That would be
Oh,
great.
springtime or something like that.
Yes.
They said they wanted to have me over for a yoga workshop, so you never know.
Oh, actually, yes, that's great. That's great. There is a little retreat center here. I think I mentioned it to you at one point, but I did go over it. So if you ever wanted to come out and do something, that would be the place to do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm open to it if you have connections, but I was talking about Salty Soul, the yoga center where I was teaching yoga. We kind of talked
Oh,
about that briefly. We never like flushed it out, but at any point when I'm ready, I think I can just reach out and be like, "Hey, I'm ready."
that's great. We would love to see you here. Thank you, Susie.
So cool to see you again. And in the
Thank you for
meantime,
having.
you know where I am.
Yep.
Thank you
Michigan.
so much, Jennifer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good
See you
luck,
later.
and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.